Welcome back to Nivesh Mahakum 2023. Coming up is a panel on planning for your goals and estate planning. Let me sort of paint you a picture because planning brings to your attention the vast realm of possibilities that exist and how you can tap into those to bridge the gap between where you are and where you want to be. It also provides opportunities to create safety nets for ourselves and, of course, our loved ones that can act as a shield during difficult times. Now, this also includes estate planning, which can become a neglected subject in the realm of financial planning. We often tend to, you know, ignore this. We can look more into it as a trap of thinking where there will be ample time and then we choose to forget it. Well, in a sense, in our next segment we'll be exploring the various aspects of planning for your goals as well as estate planning. And to help dissect a lot of the talking points, we have a panel of expert speakers. Let me quickly introduce them to you, starting with Deepak Jain, who's Director for India and South Asia at the American Academy of Financial Management. He joins us for this panel. And along with him is Harsh Rungta, founder of Fee Only Investment Advisors LLP and chairperson ARIA. Joining us on the panel also is Anuradha Sriram, Chief Actuarial Officer at Aditya Birla Health Insurance Corporation Limited. And last but definitely not the least, we have with us Mr. K.S. Rao, Head of Investor Education and Distributor Development at Aditya Birla Sun Life AMC Limited. Welcome to the show, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us. Indeed, we've had two keywords come out of our discussion so far, which is patience and discipline. Let's focus on the third keyword, which is planning. Deepak, let me start with you and help our viewers understand what does estate planning entail and what are its benefits. Well, I believe there's a bit of an issue with regards to Deepak's, I think, video. So we'll see if he joins us back. Deepak, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Can you hear me?
Perfect. Yes, I can. Let me recap the question that I had for you. And we want to understand from you, so to enable the viewing audience to figure out, what does estate planning entail and what are its benefits?
So whenever I start talking about estate planning, first thing I have to tell people is this is not about real estate. Because this word between real estate and estate planning is common, so many people think it's about real estate. So first let's understand what is your estate. So anything which you own today is your estate. Everything which you will own on the date of your death is your estate. And everything which you will own post your death is also part of your estate. So basically it's estate is whatever you own today and whatever you will own in future. Now systematically planning the transfer of this estate after your lifetime is called estate planning. And to understand what is estate planning, I'll just ask some questions to the viewers. First is, do you want to retain control over your estate and assets till you are alive? The second question is, in case you become incapacitated, you are in coma, you are mentally incapacitated, would you still like to take care of yourself and your loved ones, at least financially, if not physically? The third question is, do you want that after your death, your property and assets are distributed as per your wishes and desires? That means it only goes to people you wanted to go, at the time you wanted to go, in the manner and mode you wanted to go, and 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 in the amount you wanted to go. And the last question is, do you want to ensure a easy and peaceful transfer of your assets after your death? Do you want that your next generation gets these assets easily without going to court, visiting lawyers, having a ill will between the inheritors? And if your answers to these four questions is yes, then you need to worry about estate planning. Because estate planning is the only way to ensure that the answers to these four questions becomes yes for you and your family. So each one of us, irrespective of their amount of wealth, life stage, or social uh, status, needs estate planning. Now the question is, what does estate planning entail? Now, when I talk about estate planning, first let's talk about that it's not only about wills. Generally, people think I make a will and my estate planning is done. It's not that. estate planning has many other document and tools apart from wills. So I'll just to brief it, I'll talk about four essential documents which each one of us should create so that we are ready with our estate plan. First is a will. So will is a simple document which tells what you want your assets to be transferred after your death. So how do you desire your assets to be transferred after your death? If you give a legal declaration of that, that's called a will. And it's the most common document, although will has many demerits which needs to be looked as per your requirements. The second document which each one of us should create is something called a letter of guardianship. So many of us have minor children, and in case both the parents pass away, their guardianship of the child has to be given to person which the parents want, and this is a document which allows you to do that. Third is a situation where suppose you become incapacitated, you are mentally disabled, etc. Now, in such situations, who would be able to access your singly owned bank accounts, singly owned mutual fund holdings? If you have given a property on rent, who will be able to take rent on your behalf and renew this rent agreement? So for this, we create a document which is called financial durable power of attorney for incapacitation, which basically is a document which allows somebody to step into your shoes and do what you want them to or what you allow them to do with your assets in case of your incapacity. And last document is something which is called a living will. So it is basically a document which takes care of your end of life wishes. So suppose you are on a ventilator for more than 15 days and there's a less than 5% chance of your revival. Now, in such situations, apart from your wealth going to a doctor or nursing home because of the medical cost, there's also a risk of the pain you bear during these terms. So
Hmm.
recently, Supreme Court allowed a very in a landmark judgment a very important document called Living Will, where they said right to die with dignity is the fundamental right of every Indian. And for that, you can create a document which is called Living Will, which allows somebody to turn off that ventilator if you allow them to do so. So these
Hmm.
are four essential documents which each one of us should have. And in the end, I will only ask people one question: if you die today, what would you leave behind for your children and family? An inheritance or a
Hmm.
mess?
That's a very, very important question and a conversation which a lot of families need to have. And as you mentioned, it's estate planning is not about real estate. It's in a sense a blueprint for the future that you are creating because it helps mitigate a lot of the issues which come up, which if left unresolved can actually cause a lot more pain to the family. Thank you so much for outlining and providing us with a brief guide on what estate planning entails. I want to also bring in aspects around say insurance, and Anuradha, let me bring you in, especially on the point of the importance of solid health insurance coverage to someone who does not attach enough importance to it. Another aspect of this conversation, your thoughts on this, Anuradha?
Thank you. And I really appreciate the opportunity to talk in this esteemed panel today. And hi and hello to everybody. Health insurance is a very important topic, and especially during and post COVID, people have realized the importance of health insurance. And as a health insurance company, we've had many instances of people who did not have adequate health insurance realizing how painful it can be without having an adequate health insurance. During COVID, they had hospitalization bills amounting to 8 to 10 lakhs, and they did not have adequate insurance, or they did not have insurance, really eating into their lifetime savings and creating a significant impact in their quality of life as well as their future uh, uh, capability to manage their lifestyles. So, health insurance per se is a very important topic. And if you look at some data points, medical inflation has always been 3 to 4% higher than retail inflation. And if you see the recent experience, the medical inflation is even higher than the usual delta that we see between retail inflation and medical inflation. Typically, it is uh, 3 to 4%, but in the last 2 3 years, we are seeing medical inflation being at least 6 to 7% higher than retail inflation. In fact, as per a study last year in 2022, the medical inflation is as high as 14%, and which is one of the highest in the Asian region. followed by China at 10%, and the few other economies at 8 to 9%, whereas the latest retail inflation numbers are less than 6%. So, which means
Hmm.
that this is something that people have to keep in perspective, and the opportunity that health insurance provides to enable an affordable risk pooling, whereby you get a very good cover at a very reasonable cost, is something that people should look at, and they should take adequate cover. See, look, unlike life or the awareness to save for retirement, which is coming now, people really don't know how much health insurance they have to take. And
Hmm.
looking at costs, and if you're living in urban or semi-urban, it's very important that you have adequate levels of insurance. And if it's a family, more so, that 10 lakhs cover is absolutely minimum required and critical, because what we are seeing with medical inflation is that cost of a cancer treatment, cost of heart ailment, and so on and so forth, is becoming very
Hmm.
high, anything between the range of 5 to 7 lakhs. And if there are a family of four, you need adequate cover. So I cannot emphasize enough the need for health insurance, the impact it can
Hmm.
have on one's lifetime savings, and the need to take adequate insurance, and especially during and post COVID. So this is something that people have to keep in mind. Let not your bad health and hospitalization put your family and the whole lifetime savings in misery, is my
Hmm.
recommendation to the audience.
All right. As the quote goes, there are two things in life which are certain: debt and taxes. I'm going to add inflation to that as well. And hopefully, we bring in insurance to that conversation as well. Because as you mentioned, a lot of people don't think about medical inflation, right? And because costs keep going up, you don't want to be in a position where you do not have the right kind of health insurance to protect you from a significant cost which could arrive, especially towards the latter part of your life when health problems arise. So it's always important to have the right kind of health insurance, in a sense, to shield you from any exigencies. And on that note, when we speak on inflation, I also want to bring in the point on asset allocation. You have to be ready for everything, you have to plan for everything. So, Harsh, let me bring you in. What kind of asset allocation would you recommend for short term, medium term, and long term goals, considering inflation is also now one of the permanent features of our life? Harsh, I believe your mic is on mute. If you could unmute yourself. All right, we'll get Harsh back in to talk about asset allocation. I believe we've got some video issues. We'll get that sorted out, and we'll get Harsh talking about asset allocation and his recommendation for short term, medium term, and long term goals. But in the meanwhile, Mr. Rao, till the time Harsh is back, I want to understand from you what are some of the common mistakes that investors make when, say, they invest for retirement. You've had extensive experience in this space, Mr. Rao. So take us through the common mistakes that you've seen. We'll get your viewpoint. And Harsh, after Mr. Rao finishes, I'll come to you with the question.
Thank you so much again. Thanks, Gautam, and indeed glad to be part of this panel. Before even thinking of the mistakes, I was a little worried and concerned because when Deepak started with a scary death, how it can be without your estate, and Anuradha says, like how life can be difficult if you are not insuring right for your health. And then I can only say I remember my father used to quote for me when I moved from the government job to the private sector. That time my father said to me, "Beta, you are leaving the job. This jahan pension tha. Abhi you are going to a place where there is no pension, but you only have a tension." And like you know, and if you are not planning for your retirement right, you always have this tension. And
Hmm.
there are two ways I deal your question on two angles, Gautam. One at the investment much before you are retiring. Second is investment after your retirement. Retirement is one subject which is most important. Every one of us understands, but many of us will never focus because this will come at a very long time. And this one goal, which there is no fund, none of us can get a loan for funding our retirement. What exactly happens is this is a place we think retirement will happen one day, but that day will suddenly will come and you don't invest. Means most of us will have the first mistake I will say is we fail to have a solid plan at the early stage of life. And that's where we have an advantage when you plan early. If you can taking the advantage of the time where the power of compounding can work. Earlier in the conversations at Nivesh Mahakum, we were talking about how the power of compounding can work. You can create a true wealth when you start at an early stage of your life. And once you fail to have a plan, then if you are not taking the time, and then another part will come is you are not investing regularly. At that point of the time, I've seen many of the investors, though they will have a plan for the retirement, and that money can be used for something else, and it can be easily postponable. And then the second segment of the investment is for the retirement. The biggest myth and mistake is we underestimate, because retirement planning is of multiple variables and multiple assumptions. If one assumption can go wrong, then everything can go wrong, and one variable you are not considered, then everything can go wrong. That's where either you are underestimating the cost of retirement or length of your retirement. Like earlier when Deepak was talking about estate planning, we all would like to live longer. I mean, myself and Deepak, we do a lot of these sessions on will writing. I say during our life, we have a will, WILL, will to live. But and everyone says, I wish I will live longer. But post life, you need to have that will where you can take that assets. This is where the retirement planning rarely taken. And one need to have these critical factors into account. The first one, and right financial advisor at that point can help to have right planning. When it comes to the post-retirement plan, most of us, we think somebody is retiring at 58, somebody is retiring at 60. We feel that entire money need to move to the safety of the assets. It is, we forget that we are going to live for another 25 or 30 years. How I can invest this money into various buckets so that I can get substantial money, taking this is I look at it as a poor investment planning. Probably Harsh is going to talk about asset allocation here. Here, post-retirement also this asset allocation will make very, very important. It's the most important part of it. And we always look at, I want to be safer, the post-retirement. It is need not be always, because situation for each one of us very different. And one need to be diligent. And of course, another one we always look at is retirement planning is different for each one of us, very different, because if you are retiring with a debt, then that is the biggest problem. You need to repay your debt and start living for that. And the one I look at is not accounting for healthcare costs, as earlier Anuradha was talking about, and you need to take this healthcare cost. Putting all this, these are the mistakes I look at. And the last biggest mistake I say is, post retirement ROI ke money ek that is return on investment, that is ROI. But post retirement ROI is have a 3 R's, triple R, like the Golden Globe one award. No, it's the triple R is your return on interest, the rate of interest, rate of inflation, and regularity and reliability of income. If you take these three into consideration, then you can plan your retirement very peacefully. And when we call this is the retirement life is a golden age, you need to bring that gold into the retirement. How you can bring that gold is not the investing in the gold. For me, that gold is an acronym. G is gainfully engaged. Keep yourself fit and work somewhere and do that. And O is optimally invested. And right investment advisor can always make sense. And L, your lifestyle decides what kind of life you are going to lead, whether healthy life or wealthy life or combination of both. And D, earlier you are talking about patience and discipline. That discipline is most important, whether it is investment or for the managing the life. This is what I would like
All
to
right. So if you play your 3 R's right when it comes to investing for retirement, you can win the golden globe of life. That's the view coming in from Mr. Ryan. Credit to you and of course the Aditya Birla team as well for a lot of the investor education programs, award-winning investor education programs that you hold to educate investors on what needs to be done and how they can live a positive life. And speaking on wills, where there is a will, there is a way, but there will always be some maps required to reach your destination. So Harsh, let me bring you back into the discussion and extend the point on asset allocation and your recommendations for the ways for achieving short term, medium term, and long term goals.
So I think first of all, thank you for this great opportunity, this great stage, and the panelists before me. I think all of us, we have emphasized on inflation and what can you do to sort of uh, manage the impact of inflation. And one of the ways, one of the very effective ways to manage that is to have a mix of investments, such that some of them give stability, like a fixed income investment. I mean, popularly called debt mutual funds, fixed deposits, etc. Those are the popular ways that will give stability. But the issue with those kind of investments is that they will rarely, net of taxes, they will rarely beat inflation. So to beat inflation and to increase and grow your wealth, you need assets that may be more volatile, in the sense they may go up and down, sometimes even eating into your capital in the short run. But in the long run, those assets, whether that is gold, whether that is domestic equity, whether that's global equity, or maybe any other asset class, that will give you the the positive, the alpha as it is called, over inflation even after taxes. So that a combination of them gives you an ideal mix of stability and growth, I think. And that is the technical word for asset allocation. I think it's important for us to remember that that is what it is. You mentioned about short term and medium term and long term. There is an easy answer and there is a slightly more nuanced answer. The easy answer is simple. The shorter your term, the mix of the stable part, which is debt investments or fixed income, greater will be the proportion of that. So if it is very short term, if you're talking 1 year, 2 year, then typically you will not really talk about any of the volatile, whether it is equity, whether it is you know global equity, etc. And as you go towards the end of it being long term, that proportion will increase and your stable can decrease, because now you also need in the long term growth. uh, issue with that simple answer is that that is only one of the parameters by which you will decide your mix. There are actually four parameters. One is what you mentioned: short term, medium term, long term. The second parameter, it's a four-sided matrix. The second uh, side to this matrix is your innate risk-taking ability. For the same long term, a person whose innate ability to take risk is high will have a higher mix of volatile assets as compared to somebody whose innate ability to take risk is low. So I think the innate ability becomes a second parameter. The third parameter is the availability of resources, as compared to what they want to achieve, what their goals are. If you have enough resources available for your goals, then you need not take higher risk, and therefore you can have a higher proportion of stable assets like debt mutual funds, versus those, other things remaining equal, whose resources are relatively low as compared to their goal requirements, and therefore they need to have a higher mix of volatile assets like domestic equity, global equity, and gold. And
All right.
only the fourth one basically is when your goals fall due. So I think it is a mix of this that will enable you to decide the proportion. A lot of our time, I think, then a client expects a lot of time to be discussed on, is this scheme right, or is this equity right, or is that right? I think what people forget, that 90% of financial planning is basically deciding what you want to do, getting to your goals, and then based on that, deciding on your asset allocation. I think the
So you will
balance.
say, look at the dish versus looking at the ingredients, right? You don't focus on the ingredients, you focus on the dish that you are going to eat. And it's that mix, that coming together, the confluence of various ingredients, which form the right kind of dish for any individual, whether they are starting out their investing journey or whether they're in a retirement phase. I'm going to take that conversation forward, and Deepak, bringing you in, because there are a lot of preconceived notions around investing for retirements have also changed in a sense. Earlier it was all debt, debt, debt. Can you elucidate on a few new age investment classes that are suitable now for retirement investing?
So before I talk about whether they are suitable or not, let me tell you what are the options available. Because
Hmm.
suitability is very personal in nature, and on a forum like this, it cannot be general.
We have 10 minutes
So
left
when
in
we
the
talk
panel, so
about
I'm going to give you 2 minutes
retirement,
overall.
basically, as Rao sir said, okay, so I go directly to the investment products which are available. So one are REITs and InvITs, right?
Hmm.
These are real estate investment trust and infrastructure investment trust, which are basically pool of real estate or infrastructure investment. You can own a share of that, and you can get returns out of it. Second is a product called alternate investment funds. So these are non-traditional investment options other than equity and debt, which are like private equity, hedge funds, etc. Third, which you can consider for your post-retirement needs, is something called immediate life annuities. So we say in retirement there is something called your survival expenses, and you should match them with products which you cannot outlive. And immediate life annuity is one of the product. Another post-retirement product which you can look at is something called a reverse mortgage, where basically most people build their biggest asset would be their home, and they can monetize this home and convert this home into regular income by mortgaging it to a bank, and the bank pays them regular money. So seeing the paucity of time, I'll rest my case here, but all of these you should uh, very professionally get looked and take call on these. Many of these may or may not suit you.
Absolutely. The suitability is what's important, but it's impressive to see the gamut of investment classes which have emerged for a viewing audience who might be looking into retirement investing as well. So, as the universe expands, the options for our investors grow. But as Deepak mentioned, always get the right kind of advice and know the suitability of the investment products to achieving your goals. Let me flip the coin, so to say, and let's look at the other side, which is the health insurance aspect. And Anuradha, to bring you in, what should our viewing audience be looking at before, say, buying a health insurance plan? And what are the different categories that are available? Deepak kind of nicely outlined the new investment classes. I want to know from you the health insurance side of things. What are the options available for our viewing audience when they approach it?
Sure. So, for the first layer of protection that a person should take for health insurance is hospitalization cover. Because
Hmm.
if there is any health related ailment, the first financial coverage that a person requires is hospitalization cover. So, that is absolutely critical. And like I said before, a minimum amount of cover of at least 10 lakhs if you're staying in an urban or a semi urban is absolutely critical. Uh, that is the first layer of cover. On top of that, it is important also to take a super top up cover, because what we are seeing is that the cover that you take of 10 lakhs may not be sufficient to you for the future. Suppose you're just 35 or 40 years old and you have a young family, then this 10 lakhs will not be adequate, because as inflation builds up, it is important that you have an affordable higher cover where the benefit of pre-existing periods etc have passed when you are in good condition. So please do take a super top up of an adequate amount. And if you see in the market, there are very attractively priced super top up offerings available for say 95 lakhs or 50 lakhs and so on and so forth, with a reasonable deductible. So if you match your base cover and your deductible in your super top up in such a way that your overall cover for hospitalization is fairly large, I would recommend a 1 crore cover, so that you have adequate amounts of cover that can take care of your hospitalization expenses over a reasonable period of time. So that's the second thing that you should do. The third you should do is, there are certain perils where you may need additional coverages that takes care of you and your family in times of need. And what we are seeing is that earlier, because of lifestyle changes and also the whole external environment of pollution and so on, the cancer instances are increasing. But unfortunately, post COVID, we are seeing cancer instances even increasing more, and the severity is also increasing. So, which means that if cancer happens, your ability to earn income is impacted, and also your hospitalization costs is not just one time, but it is an ongoing expense. So, how do you take care of that over and above your regular cover for other hospitalization needs? So, it's important to have a good cancer cover, which comes at very attractive costs. So, please do take a minimum amount of cancer cover. I think these three will take care of your needs quite comprehensively. And if you do
Hmm.
need, if you're young, then it is always good to have a personal accident cover because you have long service ahead of you and your family is dependent on you for replacement of income. So either take a life cover that gives you personal accident coverage or take a separate personal accident cover so that if you're earning a certain income, some multiples of that should be taken as personal accident cover so that you have your family protected for any unforeseen events so that they are not left out in the lurch without any ongoing income and coverage to them. So this is what
All
I
right.
would
Well,
recommend.
that's a great
Please.
guide provided by you, Anuradha, in terms of the options that are available when it comes to health insurance for our viewing audience. And they need to keep this front and center in their minds as well, because as you mentioned, it's a shield for protecting them in the latter year as well. And it's great to see all the options that are available for securing their future. As we are running out of time, I have just two questions left. So I'll come to Harsh for one and Mr. Rao to give us the final word. Harsh, in the age of influencer culture and social media cacophony, it's easy to sort of get carried away and jump into risky investment bandwagons. So, how can investors avoid falling prey to such echo chambers? Your thoughts on this?
So this is something that's happening to us all the time. Our clients come back and say, "Can I put money in crypto? Can I do this?" And our response is simple: indulge this. Okay,
Hmm.
indulge this proclivity that you have, but limit the extent. This is what you could call a discretionary amount, or the mad money concept, that you limit, you decide in advance, this is the value that I would do, and this, let me do what I want. I think the key thing is to treat it just like, say, you would in a diet plan. You're going through a very healthy diet plan in order to live a better lifestyle, to lose weight, and you need to have a little bit of cheat, but you allow person to indulge, which is a little bit of an ice cream. It, as long as it is little, I think it adds to the without detracting from the main thing that you are doing. I think that
Hmm.
indulgence helps you move forward. So I think if you talk to the client and make sure that they are not doing it for the wrong reason. Most people are doing it ki I will get high returns and therefore I will increase the amount of money available to me in retirement. I think as long as that part is taken care of, ki no, what you are doing is you are indulging into a natural human tendency to
Hmm.
take a punt. As long as you control what you are putting it at, I think it actually aids you in making sure you do the right asset allocation for the balance amount. So this is something we encourage actually all our clients to do, even in fact in cases where their resources are not enough to meet all goals. In fact, there, the extent of that mad money is very important, but the fact that it needs to be there is even more important.
All right. We'll add another word to the Nivesh Mahakum 2023 dictionary, which is control. And it's a very interesting analogy that you draw on these new age buzzy investment products, where you look at it from your clients from a cheat meal perspective. So you can try it, but always be in control of your finances and have a very limited exposure. Very interesting viewpoint, Harsha. Mr. Rao, coming to you for the last word in this. It's been a wide ranging discussion, and when we look at it broadly, staying committed to investing for goals, it can be tricky if you're, say, in the middle of a crisis or have just been through one. So in your view, as we look to wrap up this discussion, how should investors prioritize different financial objectives after a crisis. For example, reviving liquidity, paying off EMIs, or resetting an emergency fund, or restarting investment for goals with varying time horizons. In these different scenarios, how do investors stay the course?
Thanks, Gautam. Since it is the last and time is short, let me put it crisper. And every crisis, sometimes it provides an opportunity. The first thing after the crisis is first you need to be calm, beyond the finance. Because like if you have already got an emergency fund, yes, you would have handled the crisis well. I imagine personal finance is always person before the finance. And how you need to handle the crisis is the most important. And it's also challenging is balancing the competing priorities which we have. The first thing to look at is what is that your important thing to do. Like, if you need to repay the loan, if that is the most important part, high debt, you need to take it off. And you need to create emergencies can come any point of the time. Do you have emergency fund is the second one. Before that, can you do the budgeting of create a budget, how you can do, your net income, where you need to get it through. But emergency fund is the first priority. And look for the long term goals. Don't postpone for your funding for the retirement. Then you have a kids education. And the best part I'd say is once you get these done, save separately for short term goals, so that you can find a way where you are not going to impact your long term your long term goals are intact, I look at. And last but not the least is sticking to the budget. And since it is soon after the crisis, it is a better way how you can enhance your ability to save more, and how you can make it enriching your investments wiser. Probably one crisis should make ensure that you are not falling into the second crisis, like COVID-19 or Ukraine war. Something can always comes to you, and you can't predict what is going to come. All that you need to do is you need to prepare.
Be prepared. That's the message coming from our panelists as we conclude this exchange of ideas on the topic of planning for your goals and, of course, estate planning. And as we've learned from our panelists, the right kind of planning can truly bestow on you, the viewer, the gift of financial freedom. And there is never a better time to start than now. Thank you so much to everyone on the panel for sharing with us their insights on the topic. I'm sure the viewers will find it valuable in the course of their investment journey. Thank you so much to everyone on that panel. And with that, we will move on to the next item on the agenda. And before that, we learn a bit more on the aspect of tackling inflation, because tackling inflation can feel like a major hurdle in the world of investment. But it's also important to remember that the power of compounding is an antithesis to the clause of inflation. And as an investor, you can tap into the magic of compounding to make your investment work for you. That's what we heard in one of the earlier panels. And what better way than a fable to explain the role played by the power of compounding in the investment story? So have a look at this.
Power of compounding, your shield against inflation. We know that inflation increases our cost of living, but it can also diminish the value of our savings. Here's how. After 25 years, you would need to shell out nearly 4 times more money to buy the same products. In effect, the worth of your savings would be 1/4 of what it is today. But there is a shield that can protect your investments against inflation. Power of compounding. This fable shows the power of compounding quite well. A king granted a scholar a stipend of 1 gold coin and agreed that the number of coins would double every day. Little did the king know that the scholar's stipend would compound to over 107 crore gold coins in just 30 days. Here is a real-life example that shows the power of compounding. Imagine yourself making an investment of 1 lakh rupees back in 1997 on a fund that offers 10% annual return. Here is the impact of time on compounding. Your investment of 1 lakh could have grown nearly 10 times to more than 10 lakh rupees in 25 years. Jump to 25 years later, 2022. Inflation has decreased the purchasing power of money by nearly 5 times. You overcame inflation. Your investment grew 10 times to rupees 10 lakh. You defeated inflation 5 to 10. Not impressed? Let's look at what can happen to this amount if you reinvest it for another 25 years. Here is the impact of capital on compounding. Your investment can grow to more than 1 crore rupees in the year 2047. You can make multiple such investments and use them to fulfill your life goals. So, start your investment journey early. Use the power of compounding and emerge prosperous into Nivesh ka Amrit Kaal.
An investor education and awareness initiative of Aditya Birla Sun Life Mutual Fund. Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.